The alien invasion of Earth will be met by a group of fearless warriors that number just 100 souls. 100 wonderful defenders of our world. Their faces are forever masked. Their tombs are forever unknown.
Wonder Eyes!
They are
The Wonderful...
So, for today we're going to be talking about Platinum Games' latest epic, exclusive to the Nintendo Wii U. This is The Wonderful 101, which is probably my most anticipated Wii U game of this year. Probably my most anticipated game of the year in general. Now, of course, when Nintendo announced their latest HD console, a lot of gamers were very excited to see their favorite Nintendo franchises brought into the HD world. Of course, people were very excited to see the latest 3D Mario game. A lot of people were excited to see the latest entry to the Pikmin series. A lot of people were very excited, and me of course, to see the Legend of Zelda tech demo that was shown off at E3 2011 during the announcement of the Wii U. So while a lot of people were excited for those, and me myself, one trailer that got my attention was for a certain game called Project P-100, which pretty much depicted a large group of heroes that combined their forces together and made all sorts of weird weapons with all these colors everywhere, fighting all of these aliens and stuff. It definitely got my attention, and it is probably one of the main reasons why I bought a Wii U, just because I can experience all sorts of weird third-party exclusives and such. So of course, as time passed, I was able to find out more information about the game as a whole, and eventually I found out that it was being developed by Platinum Games, from the developers and producers behind over-the-top action games like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, Mad World for the Wii, and even the recent Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. It also got my attention that I was going to get a name change from Project P-100 to The Wonderful 101. Now this game already got me excited. It was probably one of the first games I bought for my Wii U, besides, of course, the new Mario game and stuff like that. But it was probably the third-party exclusive that I really wanted to stick my hands on, because all the time I would see trailers for this game, and it got me very interested. A bit confused, but interested. Because after all, what's very unique about Platinum Games as a whole is that they're given as much freedom to work independently on whatever they want with their games. They give them a license, they give them a publishing effort, and they're able to do just whatever they want with their games, which really creates very high impact and extreme action sequences in their games, exciting plot lines and characters, very artistic designs, especially for games like Okami, and of course, true to the tradition of Platinum Games, heavy, versatile combat systems filled with all the good stuff. Combos, parries, different special moves, you name it. Wonderful 101 certainly looked like somewhat of a departure from the developer's usual track record. I mean, one look at it, you can already see many resemblances, artistically speaking, to Beautiful Joe. And when I first saw footage of the game, it honestly confused me a bit, but then again, it did get me hyped, because what I was witnessing looked amazing, fast-paced, and kept me wanting to see more about the characters. But then again, I had no clear idea of how the combat would be like. That is, until I got the demo for it later on, during a Nintendo Direct. So finally, a couple of weeks after the demo, I finally picked up my copy of the game a week after its release. Probably while others were playing their Grand Theft Auto 5s, but that's fine for them. And thanks to my sister giving it to me for a gift, I immediately became hooked on the experience. I was mastering the combat mechanics, I was taking in the deep and developed story and its overall lightheartedness, being amazed at what I was experiencing, because I knew the game would be enjoyable, but I never would have thought it would turn out this great, this wonderful. And in other words, it really is something you have to experience for yourself. So story-wise, it pretty much goes like this. There's a group of alien invaders known as the Gethjerk. What does Gethjerk stand for? Well, it's the guild of evil aliens terrorizing humans with gigawatt bombs, energy beams, ray guns, and killer lasers. That's a bit of a mouthful, and trust me, there's a lot of that in this game. These alien invaders consider Earth a threat to galactic peace, and it's up to a group of up to 100 Wonderful Ones, known as the Wonderful 100, who who have the ability to transform into different Unite morphs to put a stop to their outerworldly forces and save the planet. Now granted, while there are 100 heroes as a whole, there are 7 main characters that are part of the leading brigade. There's Wonder Red, who has the ability to change into a hand. There's Wonder Blue, who has the ability to change into a sword. Wonder Green can change into a gun. Wonder Pink can form a whip. Wonder Yellow can form a hammer. Wonder White can form claws. And finally, Wonder Black can form a time-freezing bomb. They also come across the Gaizok, who are renowned space pirates aiding Gethjerk in their invasion, who basically act as your nemesis throughout the story, as they too also have 100 soldiers and are able to unite morph as well. So that was the basic gist of the story. Overall, I thought the story was very thrilling and it got me engaged in the first few minutes, and definitely it felt lighthearted in some elements. After all, it takes some things from classic superhero stories, having average people wearing costumes and masks, having superpowers, an overarching evil villain, one-liners, catchphrases, intense battle sequences, drama. It has it all in spades. The script itself was also well written. Voice acting for the most part sounds great, with some well-known actors out there like Tara Strong for Wonder Pink, and, well for me at least, Roger Craig Smith for Wonder Blue. That immediately made me think of Chris Redfield or Sonic. The game itself certainly has a cartoony atmosphere that doesn't try to take itself too seriously. As for the characters themselves, well, character interactions are pretty good as well. I liked how the characters were, self-aware of how cheesy their catchphrases are. I like the dynamic between Wonder Blue and Wonder Green pulling each other's leg. I like the tension between the Gethjerk army and the Gaizok, the different kinds of encounters. I like the personalities of the characters, like how Wonder Blue is this sort of cocky guy, Wonder Yellow is this sort of strong but very shy guy, Wonder White is the wise person who never shuts up with lectures. Especially Wonder Blue in general, he has certain intentions that force him to make all sorts of unpredictable decisions in this game. And overall, I liked how much of a build-up there was to each operation, leading to the epic boss encounters. So overall, it was an enjoyable story with just the right amounts of seriousness, cheerfulness, and overall epicness towards the grand finale itself. By God, that finale was probably one of the best finales I've ever experienced in a video game. It's that spectacular. Now you're probably asking, why is it called the Wonderful 101? Isn't there just 100 heroes? Well, you're just gonna have to play the game to find out for yourself. Sorry. Gameplay-wise, it's a top-down action game where you control up to 100 heroes, and by using their powers to morph into different weapons, you face off against many forms of alien enemies. The formula goes, the more heroes you have, the larger and stronger your Unite morph will be, and each of the 7 main heroes has character-specific weapons and abilities. Now the idea itself sounds good on paper, but it's certainly easier said than done. The general experience of the Wonderful 101 can pretty much go like this. You start off the game right away in the middle of an action sequence, and the game doesn't do the best job on explaining how the controls and combat mechanic works. All they really do is give you a button tutorial, and you're pretty much left with yourself to find out how the controls work. Eventually, you take time to adapt to the controls in radically different gameplay style. You start to experiment with the different abilities and how to effectively use them against certain enemies, and you continue to gain more heroes along the way, therefore gaining more skill and enjoyment over the combat. And by the end, you're pulling off combos and mashing on evil baddies before you know it. So basically, how it goes is like this. The game takes time to master, but trying to earn the best experience is all up to your playing skills. The game doesn't hold your hand in any sort of way, it's all up to you. And that's probably the best mark of a hero. So, in order to create these Unite morphs, the team creates a Wonderliner that forms different shapes that correlate with the specific Unite power. For example, forming a circle will create the Unite hand, forming a straight line will form the Unite sword, and forming a right angle will form the Unite gun. And considering how you have to use the Wii U gamepad in your hands, you assume you use the touchscreen controls to draw the Unite morph manually. This method does work, but it does become intrusive to use when you have to look from the gamepad and the TV at the same time, and doesn't have enough reach to draw bigger lines. So instead you discover that using the right stick to pull off these Unite morphs is much easier and much more efficient than using the touchscreen, and you can even use the R button to pull off the line faster. So pretty much I recommend using a Pro Controller for this game. I've had too many instances where friends were just confused on how to play the game just because they were using the Wii U gamepad and not the Pro Controller, so I recommend using that instead. Maybe you could just keep the gamepad somewhere beside the TV, I guess. Another common complaint is that the camera is always fixed at an angle and it's hard to focus on a bajillion things going on at once. You then discover that you can zoom the camera in and out with the L and R buttons, and even then you can group together your team, pull them close, and with the regroup button, you can just keep them together. And besides, the game itself is designed around the fixed camera, so it's fine. The combat itself is very satisfying to pull off once you get accustomed to it. First of all, you have your basic team attack, which leeches onto enemies, which kind of seems very akin to Pikmin. And when the enemy shines, they become vulnerable to pull off your Unite attacks. Unite morphs are very unique, and they all play very differently from each other. For example, Unite Hand is for enemies with large health meters, Unite Sword is good for taking out large groups of small enemies, Unite Gun is for ranged enemies, Unite Whip is for spiked enemies, the list goes on. You also have a Wonder Mart, which supplies you with health regenerating items and optional upgrades to your basic attacks and certain stats of your characters. For example, you can upgrade their speed and the reach of the Wonderliner, upgrading the amount of power an attack has, new secondary Unite morphs, the works. The key to this game is pulling off strong combos and knowing how to manipulate these techniques because they are essential to mastering the game, and once you get the hang of how the mechanics work, the game plays like absolute bliss. The combat has varied enemies to face, leading to very frantic and exciting attacks. Enemies range from small fodder to large baddies with actual strategies. You have deflecting and dodging abilities. The boss battles are absolutely amazing and innovative, easily the highlight of the operations. In fact, half of the battles is literally climbing the giant beast and taking out different body parts with special quicktime events, mashing the action button, or just simply pulling off a Unite Morph in a split second. It's some very excessive and awesome stuff, and it all depends on how accustomed you are to the gameplay style. Now, of course, you have the typical Wii U gamepad gimmicks where you have to look at the second screen while also paying attention to the television, and they're basically used to change up the gameplay. Sometimes they are a bit annoying to look at the gameplay and back at the television at the same time. Some of them are awkward to control due to the gyroscope controls, but they are pretty brief, and they do spice up the gameplay, and they're nothing really too bad to put up with. But of course, the different playstyles are very unique and turn the table on regular combat a lot. There's one particular section where it's basically Punch-Out with giant robots. It's exactly like Punch-Out. And there's even a shoot-'em-up section, which almost feels just like Gradius. There's a group of enemies going in a line and you have to shoot them, and the last enemy gives you a power-up, and even the commissioner in the ship announces the power-up, just like in Gradius. It's really amazing. Presentation-wise, the game itself looks very colorful and clean. It has that superhero aesthetic that makes it look very special. The character models are very glossy, mouth animations. I don't think it's very deliberate, but sometimes they don't match the voice acting, which kind of gave me an anime vibe, but it is pretty cool. The environments are very large in scope compared to how tiny the wonderful 100 actually are. It's just a very crisp and clean looking game to look at, and seeing the combat in action really makes the game pop out. The soundtrack itself is also pretty fantastic. It's very triumphant and epic when it needs to be. There's music cues for the transformation sequences and the boss battles reaching their peak. And the hero's march song, the Unstoppable Wonderful 101, is majestic cheesiness at its finest. I myself have memorized all the lyrics in cue. That's how much I love it. So those are my brief thoughts on the game as a whole. Overall, the Wonderful 101 was probably one of the biggest surprises to a third-party Nintendo exclusive game I've played in years. I mean, never had a game made me smile and have this much fun with its gameplay, had me raving about how awesome the narrative and the legacy is, and of course, culminating with the incredible finale itself, which pretty much just served the experience as a whole. Now, to be fair, since I am gushing a bit, I could see why this game may not be for everyone's cup of tea. I mean, maybe you wouldn't get used to how repetitive and mashy the combat may be at times, or the gamepad gimmicks that might confuse and disorient some players, but if you're willing to sit down and give some operations a shot and just set aside all of those differences and keep the mindset of having a good time, hell, even give the 4-player multiplayer mission mode a shot, because then you might find plenty of enjoyment, excitement, and possible surprises with this game. So if you own a Wii U or are considering to buy one for the holiday season, I wholeheartedly recommend giving this game a chance to experience just for yourself. If you're a fan of action games like Bayonetta or Rising Revengeance, you're probably going to like this game quite a bit. I mean, heck, you may see some reviews of this game saying how it's nothing too special or how the controls in combat are bothersome. That's just what they think, but I beat the game from beginning to glorious end, and I can definitely say it's one of the most unique experiences on the Wii U, probably the most underrated game of 2013. So those are my thoughts on the Wonderful 101. Thank you for watching, and take care. Got no fame, the function to claim. Okay, I'm done.